Hey everybody, I'm Greg Sowell, and this is Why Am I, a podcast where I talk to interesting people and try and trace a path to where they find themselves today. So my guest this go around is Kelly Edwards. She's got an impressive resume. So former exec in LA, film producer, writer, teacher. But honestly, in this conversation, she kind of only lightly touches on those things. They don't define the person inside of Kelly, right? Because she's like a phoenix that is constantly being reborn into a completely different person. Not only that, but she opens her eyes each morning, excited to see who she'll become. I hope you enjoy this chat with Kelly. Kelly, thank you for joining me on the Why Am I podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The biggest, brightest smile I have seen all day. So I greatly appreciate that for sure.
You've been shut into your basement?
Yes, in my little troll
Okay,
cavern here all day long. But no. So generally not every time I meet somebody, but fairly quickly, if I think you're interesting, I ask virtually everybody the exact same question. And that is, who are you? And that is not necessarily this is the thing that I want to see. I don't necessarily want how the world sees you. I want how you see yourself. So who are you from the inside out? You let me know.
That's interesting. Let me just start by saying I've listened to some of your podcasts and I've been fascinated by some of the people who have been on it. And quite honestly, wondering, well, what could I bring to this that would be of use to you? And also wondering, why did you start this? Because it seems like you're searching for something, some sort of answers. And I want to know if I could just ask before I start.
Absolutely.
Why?
Absolutely.
Why are you?
Why am I? There's a lot of answers. Well, first, I am flattered that you would listen to some of the podcasts. That's like so cool. But also, it seems always kind of weird when somebody has no idea what they're stepping into, but also that's kind of exciting. My brain contains multitudes, right? Like I never know which direction. I think I used to do a technical podcast that was really boring to most of the world. There was this tiny sliver of nerds that were super excited about it. And I would meet new people on there, and I found that one of my favorite parts was just meeting new people, figuring out where they came from and what was interesting, what was important to them. And there was some other people in my life that have come and gone. There was an uncle of mine named Uncle Lee. He used to love to tell stories, and at Christmas one time he told me the story that he had made up about Jack Frost. And Jack Frost was this guy down on his luck, and through the magic of something, everything turned out all right. And my 15-year-old brain didn't retain any of that. I don't remember it. But I remember at the end of it, he told me, I want to record this, at some point so that my grandkids can hear it. Well, it was about 2 months later, massive heart attack, he was gone. And I know that always stuck with me. It's like, it almost felt like in that moment, it was my job to remember this and I didn't do it. I know that seems weird, right? Kids take in stuff oddly or whatever. So I always thought, if you could record a piece of a person and put it out there for everybody to see, they live forever, right? Like they go on, especially when people have important things to say. You know what? And I found so many of us have unique perspectives, right? Because we're all this collection of experiences and memories and, all this stuff comes together. And I've had people tell me the same thing I've heard a million times, but they tell me it in their unique way, and it clicks and it changes me, changes the way I think, changes the way I feel. And I love the idea that I could potentially have that happen for me through this podcast, but also the fact that I put it out there and maybe it happens for other people. That's I don't know, it feels really special. Yeah. And there's a moment sometimes where you see a person the way they see themselves, and maybe in a way that nobody else has, and it means something to them. And that's such a special experience for me. But also, I'm really a little bit on the spectrum. And so this has been this interesting learning place for me where I can be completely open and I can feel what somebody is telling me in a safe environment, right?
Well,
I learned if you want to like feel things and build your empathy muscle, you can't just walk around in the world doing that everywhere. You'll go crazy. Like for me at first, it was a fire hose. It was either everything or nothing. And this became this special place where I could test my hypothesis. Like, I think you feel this way. You let me know, and I would adjust. And it's helped me grow. So kudos to you for having me talk for 5 minutes before you said anything. I love how you did that.
But let me tell you what I heard from you. Because and by the way, I love how sometimes you do that with other guests, and I tend to do the same thing. Let me repeat back what I just heard. Because you said something that sort of stuck with me really early on, which was when you talked about your uncle, and you talked about that you didn't remember the thing, but you remembered how it made you feel. To me, that was something that resonated with me, because what you have done is you've encapsulated some people's experiences, but you're also encapsulating a lot of feeling in those experiences. Like, I was listening to the guy who was recalling his job. He's a horrible job. He was a police officer, and he'd seen a lot of bad stuff. Mm-hmm. And you could hear him go through those moments again. It was really affecting. I listened to it from start to finish, and I was like, Jesus, I'm in that space going through those crime scenes with him. And he is talking about compartmentalizing. He's talking about the horrors. He's also talking about the fact that there was elation when he solved a case that had been dormant for 21 years. And I feel like you took us on a journey through an experience. I might not remember the details, but I will remember that, how I felt about hearing his story. So I think I loved that you have collected these people. It's a really interesting group of people. They're so different. Like, there's not one person that I could go, oh, I would see this person up against this person on a podcast. It makes no sense who you've chosen. It's like this this bag of random cards that came from all these different kinds of decks. There's that woman Kat, who talked about her spirituality and psychedelics. And as I was listening to it, I was flashing back to, I was raised as a Christian Scientist. And a lot of the things that she was talking about were very much Christian Scientist tenets. You know, when you talk about mind and spirit and how we show up in the world and how we're all connected, that's Christian Science. And I thought, oh, wow, I'd like to dig in more to what she's saying and how does that relate to the things that I learned as a child that I went away from. Because now I'm cycling back to a lot of those things in my age now and going, I think we're all searching for meaning, and we're all searching for what's my place here. So I don't know. I'm sort of taken by the whole concept of what you are doing and putting out there and how you are manifesting this odd collection of curiosities that are obviously meaningful to you and that are creating kind of a little bit of a roadmap for people.
You know, what I've found is virtually no idea I have is my own. It's usually a collection of all of these people. And that's why it's so weird. Like, whenever I pull something out that somebody's told me on the podcast, I usually want to put their name to it because I want to honor that gift that they gave me. And I've learned that I had to stop doing that because every other sentence I was doing that. And it's like, it interrupts the flow of conversation with another human being. You can't do that. And I came to realize that through all these gifts these people have given me, it's slowly become part of me, you know, and part of my belief system, and altered the way I think and feel and interact with the world around me, and made me genuinely more empathetic, you know. And I've talked to people before, and they said, you know, I want to be a better father, a better husband, wife, friend. But I think at the very top of all that is better human, right? If you're just a better human, filters down to everything else. And so
I agree.
So you're looking for meaning in life. What's your normal avenues of doing that? I don't even have words for the way it makes me feel, like you finding some specialness and meaning in all these humans. I guess it validates this whole crazy endeavor. Obviously, it's just for me. It builds me and helps me become better. But the fact that it actually helps other people is like insane. So I'm curious, what's your normal avenue for finding meaning?
I think I think like all of us, I think I'm still looking. I feel myself evolving. I always called myself the queen of the pivot, because every so many years I change direction wildly into something new. I do something very radical in terms of my job, or something changes. And a friend of mine years ago had said something about, I think there's some sort of statistic or biology that says that every 7 years your body changes all of its cells. Well, I kind of feel like I feel that and embody that, because I remember at 28 feeling different. Something changed at 28 where I made different decisions than I had made before in my life. Now, obviously, I was an infant before that, but I remember thinking to myself and making a very distinct decision to value myself more and not drive to Vegas anymore with friends, and not go and stay with 7 people in a hotel room. And I refused then to go to a restaurant that didn't have valet parking. Like, life's too short for some of those things, right? And make myself life, make it easier, spend a little extra money to get the conveniences of life. And I think that every 7 years I had been on this sort of trajectory where I would learn something new, and then I'd master that thing, and then I'd move on. And I had this very, very big life shift at 50 when I separated from my husband, who, by the way, has been living with me for the last year. And that's a whole other story we'll get to eventually. But again, it's a message in evolving as a human being, and realizing a lot about the marriage and my part in the marriage and his part in the marriage, and how he is still my best friend on the planet. And it's a little weird little tale about how it happened, but he's downstairs right now watching television with one of my daughters. But it's funny, because at one point he said to me something like, I can't believe that you wake up every morning excited to start the day, and you go to bed every night excited to start the, to go to sleep. And he goes, I don't feel that way. And I go, I don't know how to feel any other way. I just get super excited about the journeys that I'm on. And I say the same thing about getting on a plane. The reason I travel so much is that getting on and off a plane are the most exciting two things I can think of. Because it's about possibilities. Like, you don't know what you're going to get when you step off the plane. So I think I live my life, if I'm looking from the inside out, in a very positive, excited state of wonder most days. Now, there are times when, of course, you go, ugh, I'm having a crappy day, but for the most part, those are blips in a road that I feel like is primarily, I'm excited about the world. And when I get into bed, I kick my feet with excitement. And I go, oh, I get to go to sleep now. And it's a weird thing. I think my mother's like that too. I have an aunt who's like that too. I have an aunt who's very much not like that. But but I think it's a pretty good thing to be in this body. Do I love how the body looks? Nope. Menopause was a bitch. But when I think of who I am to myself, I think it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, for sure. That seems like an unimaginably incredible gift, to be excited just at the opportunities of what the day might bring. Like, I was thinking you were going to say excited about this vacation coming up, or this this new project I'm working on, but it sounds like you're genuinely excited for the possibilities of every single day. And that is amazing. Like that must be, were you always this way, or is this something that developed over time? It's like, this is something that some secret your mom passed on to you? Like, what is this?
I don't know. I would say, I think generally speaking, I'm going to say I think I don't know. I never even thought about it. Was I born this way or was I not? And it's as if I'm some sort of weird entity. I don't know that it's not normal.
It
But
sounds like a unicorn behavior to me in an amazing way.
yeah, I never really thought about how this manifest. I'm trying to think about being back in, I was always just like everybody else plagued with insecurities. I think, you always think that you need to be more, want more, you know, uh, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not whatever. Um, in your teenage years, nothing is great. You're all just elbows and knees and
Yeah,
you're
it's all
awkward.
awkward and bad. Yeah.
Um, but I think for the most part, this is really interesting. I'm having to go to some places where I'm like rewinding the history of my life. Uh, I think again, part of it too is realizing that you don't have to do everything that everybody tells you you're supposed to do. And sometimes when you start to take off some things off your plate and realize that, no, I don't have to, whatever it is, go to the grocery store, I can go tomorrow. There's just something that sort of alleviates some of the weight of living.
Hmm.
Sometimes life just bogs you down with, yeah, I've got to pay another bill.
Yeah.
And I don't want to. In the back of your head, you're just sort of like, ugh. And then the not doing it is worse than doing it
Yeah.
and
It
getting
becomes
it
a
done.
big monster, right? Yeah.
It does. But I think for the most part, I show up for myself okay. I've had to in the workplace deal with a lot of stuff that I think anybody anybody goes through, you get the promotion, you don't get the promotion,
Yeah.
you're dealing with coworkers, they're terrible people. Sometimes it's great, sometimes things don't work out, sometimes you
Right.
get fired, so whatever. So I can't say that every day is the best day in the world, but I think for the most part, I'm pretty excited to be Kelly Edwards.
I can definitely imagine how awesome it must be. You were talking about letting some stuff go. So that was something I kind of struggled with for a long time. Was it always felt like I never wanted to give up on anything. Like, I don't want to give up on this. I don't want to and I had to learn there's a difference between giving up and letting go, right? Letting go to me was the realization that I've I'm a finite resource. I've only got so many hours in the day and I can only do so many things, and this thing isn't worth my time and energy. So I can let that go, right?
Right.
It's not giving up. I'm not failing. I'm just choosing to, use me, this resource that constantly gets burnt out. I mean, I'm
Right.
sure you've experienced that as well, right? Like, it's very cyclical. It goes in these nice waves or tsunamis, maybe, of burnout, as a nice way of saying it. A big wave, and then you get this little recovery period, another one. But
Right.
it was definitely tough for me. Is that something that you've kind of sort of struggled with over time, like
Letting
the
go.
the give up mentality versus letting go?
I would say I think we all have to find that balance. And sometimes that balance is, we put things on our list. I do to-do lists all the time. I have to-do lists like crazy.
Me too.
And sometimes things are not ready to be birthed. And I
Mm.
do this a lot in my writing. I'll have I'll come up with a lot of ideas. They'll be great ideas. Sometimes they haven't spoken enough to me so that I can actually write them.
Hmm.
I know they're really good ideas, but the characters aren't there or whatever. I keep them, but I put them down lower on the list. Like, I've got a book idea that I've been thinking about. It's not really ready to be birthed yet.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to stress about it and try to force it. It's just not ready. There are other things or other people who are screaming in my head who need more attention. So it's just a not right now. And I think that we have to give ourselves the grace to manifest and let those things that are ready and that are desiring to be heard get them first crack at it, get them first in line. And then sometimes what I'm looking at in terms of ideas, sometimes those ideas are supposed to be in a different form and I haven't found that form yet. So for example, I have a project that I'd actually had a dream. This is why I'm so obsessed with that cat lady, because Kat had talked about, just the universe a lot. And I firmly believe that we're just receivers for the universe. The universe wants to say something. They go, hey, you're the vessel, go ahead. And if you're not the vessel, then it'll go away and somebody else will do it and you'll see that manifest in some sort of way. But I downloaded an entire screenplay out of a dream. It was 100% done. It was in my mind. It was starring John Cleese and Christina Applegate. It was a whole thing. I got up and I just downloaded it and I wrote it. And then I wrote the script and then I lost the script on the plane. My water jug had opened up in my bag. It never happens. I never take water on the plane. It opened up, destroyed the computer. It was unsalvageable and it went away and I never rewrote it. But then I realized as I was going through life, I realized I didn't love that screenplay. It wasn't really ready. It wasn't really fully baked. And there was another version of that that's a better version of it. So I started to write it as an audio drama. And just the two of those characters, just the two of them in this thing, as opposed to a whole world of people, was much more insightful, much more about me, much more personal. And it seemed to want to be that, and it didn't want to be that other thing. And so sometimes letting go means, oh, it's not going to look in the same way that it looked before. It's going to look a little differently. And it might end up being a play. It might end up being, remember that movie Barfly with Mickey Rourke and Faye Dunaway? It might end up being a barfly. Was it Faye Dunaway? It might end up being just a conversation between these two people, but saying everything that I felt like I needed to say without all of the antics of it having to live as a screenplay. So sometimes that giving up is not a giving up. It's that I was trying to force something that didn't need to live in the body that it was living in. And I needed to be the one to move on because it is perfect the way it is. It is, as an idea, a perfect thing in itself. And that I was the problem forcing it into a place that it didn't need to be.
Do you think you would have come to that realization if it wasn't for that crazy mishap?
Yes, because I didn't love it.
Oh.
I liked it. I didn't love it. And yet I was committed to it because I had already put it on paper. And that sometimes is the problem. When you don't go, oh, this is terrible.
Why do you keep
but
from
I
getting
did it.
How do
but
you keep from
it.
getting too married to your baby? Like my idea, I must see this thing, it must grow, and like how do you kind of step back a little bit? How do you decouple to kind of take an objective look at it? How's that possible?
I think when something's not working. I definitely know when something's not working. I know when, and I will. It's a litmus test of. I know when I haven't put myself into it enough.
Oh,
it's not working. It's ideas, but it's not personal. It's a concept, but it's not truth.
Put yourself into it. Does that mean you look at it and you can see parts of yourself in it?
Yeah.
Like parts of your personality?
Here's a perfect example. So I'm working on a screenplay right now. I finished it. People like it. I'm getting notes. I got a couple of notes. The notes were Grace notes. And as I'm going back through it, I'm doing a real character pass to go, I know that there are moments here that feel like placeholders to me because I need to get from point A to point B. But the real part of it is, why is this woman? So here's a perfect example. The opening scene is a woman in a boardroom having a confrontation with a woman who is always serving up microaggressions. There's just this underlying tension where she's just always lobbing these little bombs at this woman. And the woman's me. The woman who is the lead essentially is me, right? Her name's Quinn. And she's always enduring. She's enduring, enduring, enduring. And when I went back to the script again, because I knew that that was going to be an issue where I would have to go deeper. I've been in that room. I've been in that situation. I've had those microaggressions lobbed at me. And so instead of putting the placeholder in, I had to do the hard work that I was reticent to do, but I knew I had to do it in order to make it better and go, let me go back to a moment where this actually happened. And then let me sit in that moment for a second and put that feeling on the page. So when this woman, a woman in my real life, had said to me something like, oh my God, you give such great notes. I can't believe how articulate you are. And I said, well, I guess my Vassar education paid off. I was like, what she's really saying to me is, I didn't think that a Black woman could be that intelligent on the page. But that's not what she was going to say. But it hurt just as much. So I had to go back to those moments and go, all right, let me live in that hurt for a second and put my character in that hurt for a second so that you will feel that hurt. So that then when she goes on that journey to get to the end where she's able to stand up for herself and not just take it, but to triumph, then we've all gone on that journey with her and we want to be on that ride with her. So it's that kind of stuff. I go back and I have to go, where is my connection with it? And how did I feel? And where was the real pain or the joy or the, surprise or the love? And how does that feel? And how do I then put that in words on a piece of paper?
How hard is it for you to, like, one, remember, but then access those feelings? Like, do you just have like a whole Rolodex in your head of, I can go back to this moment and I can actually feel that thing that I felt in that time?
I think we all can, don't we? I mean, we all feel.
Not all of us. It's not, I mean, some people are just baked a little different, right? So, like, to me, that's fascinating. I when you like photocopy something a million times over, you can see like these weird aberrations and shadows, kind of a like a ghost of what it formerly was. That's kind of how I can access stuff sometimes. Like, I can sort of remember a shadow of a feeling, but it's not like real and now and visceral vivid for me. Yeah.
But I think when you're writing something, and at least for me, when I'm writing something, I'm writing about something that I feel very strongly about to begin with. So I tend to write a lot of things about the injustices of being a Black woman. Yeah. That's just, it comes out all the time. I'm very, very much in that state. And so it comes pretty easily because I can, in my head, I've got like a lot of grievances. I'm like, let me put that down there.
I've got a lot of problems with you people.
That's right. Let me just tell you. Or whatever it is, whatever the piece is. I wrote a piece in grad school, which was, by the way, not that long ago. So I only got my graduate degree a couple of years ago. But it was essentially about a woman who, excuse my nose, a woman who was about to turn 50 and who found her diary from when she was 15 and had a list of 50 things she wanted to do before she was 50. So it's called 50 by 50. And she's 49 years old and she goes, oh, I haven't done any of these. I got a year to do all these things. And they're terrible things, like learn how to break dance, which I always wanted to learn how. Never did it. I'm terrible. It's she wants to go backstage at an Oasis concert. That's never going to happen.
Never
going to happen.
Yeah. Ship sailed.
And then the first thing in the pilot is she wants to get a kiss from her high school crush. So she goes on this journey to find her high school crush. And everything that goes into this piece is so much about me. This was written at a time when I had just, this is after, but I had separated from my husband. And I had gone back to you sort of have this life epiphany where you go, oh, my kids are in school. I have all the time in the world. I'm going to go back and get my degree. But also, who was it that I wanted to be when I was 15 years old? And how did I get derailed into being the breadwinner of the family and working so hard that I barely saw my kids. And like, I was just on this treadmill. I was on this path and I was running really hard to keep a roof over our heads and pay off the cars. And like, there was just so much that, again, we all get the trappings of this is what you should do. And this is what you should want. And this is how you should live your life. And don't you want to go on all these vacations with your friends to Bora Bora or whatever it is? I don't know. There's this, the world seems to want to tell you, don't go for the dream because that's being unreasonable. I'm going to put you in a little tiny box. And so here I was at 50 thinking I was living a big life, and I was really living a very, very small life.
Yeah.
And just like this character, Jenny Pringle, in this script, I was putting all of this angst onto this page. I was tapping into the little 15-year-old me going, oh, but I want to write. And I've written all these stories, and I've made all these magazines in my house. And, I love going to movies, and I love listening to the words and everything that I love reading plays, and I love emotion, and I want to make something that feels like I felt when I saw Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And you want to feel those things, right? Want to learn how to make someone else feel those things. So I put a lot of that stuff into this script. So, when she's with her girlfriend and she feels like she's, schlubby next to her beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed, statuesque best friend. And I had a best friend named Blair Richwood. She's still my best friend, but tall, statuesque, gorgeous girl. And I always felt like the dumpy sidekick. That's going in the script. The feeling of wanting to find that crush, but then, well, what's he going to think of me when I show up and I'm almost 50? All of those sort of things, I just throw those in there. And then I go, all right, how do I feel and how did I tap into it? And you just, do your best to access it. And you could feel it when it's right, and you feel it when it's false. And I've developed a lot of writers over my career. And you could tell the ones who, I call it dropping in right away, when they get there, when they just access it really quickly, when they're willing to, at the drop of a hat, tell you the terrible stuff that they've hidden away from everybody else. That's when you want to get to that place where, yeah, open up my chest cavity and just reach in there, pull out my heart. And I think that we're all sort of striving for that. And the people who do it really well, I think, are the people who get the farthest, the fastest. When the people who are still circling into, but this is a spaceship and we're dealing with, we've made up this weird world and it's all concept. Now, there can be heart in that, but when it's all concept, it's nobody really attaches to it emotionally.
Yeah, nobody connects with a spaceship, or some medieval setting. You know what I mean? You're not.
That's right. You have to get the character juicy goodness, because that character who's going through that medieval setting or that spaceship is dealing with some real shit from their past, and that's the thing that we're interested in. We want that stuff.
Yeah. So when you write about yourself and you put so much of yourself in there, is it kind of a cathartic act, or is it like therapy? Is it you running scenarios and figuring out what would I do in this place? Like, how would I react? And I did this thing this way. What could have I done different? Like, what's the feeling for you writing all this stuff?
It's for sure, it's a do-over. But I think, I don't know that I get to the end and feel like I've fixed anything. Like, I don't get to the end and go, now I've said it. Now I feel better about it.
I'm healed.
That's right. Right. Racism is over. No, it's, I do feel, though, I was telling somebody this recently. I said, I've made a decision in 2024 to say no to a lot. Like, the fact that I said yes to you was remarkable, because,
well, it's 2023 still, so
yeah. But literally by the end of 2024, January of 2024, I'm on my year of no, because I realized after finishing this script and finishing some other material, after I'm done with it, with a draft that I feel like is a draft, like a draft to send to people, not the vomit draft, but the draft, I have to lay down for about a week. I'm emotionally spent. I'm drained. My body shuts down, almost as though, when you go for when we all go to Christmas break, we all get sick, right? Because our body is just going, all right, you've been chugging along for 11 months. Now you're going to power down, and we're going to make sure you stay in bed because we're going to give you a big cold or flu. It happens when I finish a script. It's like turning off a switch and my body just goes, ooh, I've just powered off. And I literally cannot move off the sofa for 5 days. That's how much emotional stuff I'm dredging up to put in a script. So yeah, it takes a lot out of me. And hopefully the good news, hopefully, is it'll be good,
I bet some of that is like, it's not just emotionally putting yourself on the page, but also the tension of, are these people going to like this thing? How do I adjust it here? Having to deal with all the parties in between, right? Because I guess it's partially a solo venture, but you have to make it for other people to see it, right? And so it's...
Yeah, true. But here's the thing. And here's the thing that here's the change.
That's what I'm here for. Yeah.
The change, I think, and I will be honest with you, let me tell you about a terrible thing that happened this time last year. It was October of last year. The change was knowing why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. I don't write for other people anymore. I write for myself. If I think it's good, if I'm happy, if I go back through it and I read it and I'm surprised because I don't remember writing it, I get excited. And yes, absolutely, you want to sell something. But I also think that's why I'm starting to go back to, I'd written a novel in 2022. And again, a third of it got destroyed on the plane ride. So I think I lost two scripts and a third of a novel on that thing. I hadn't backed it up. I was going to back it up the day before. The dogs ran in and I forgot to back it up to the cloud and I lost it. But I knew that I was a better writer at my 90th word in that novel, 92,000th word at in that novel than it was in the first. And I was going to have to go back and fix it anyway. And in the process, I discovered, the reason I didn't love it is that I was doing it through the wrong character's eyes. I had the wrong lead. So I'm now going back and making it better. So again, everything can be a blessing if you look at it as a blessing. I forgot what you said. What was you asking? But in any case, let me tell you about the bad thing. I was going to tell you about the bad thing. Okay. So October 2022, I was having a really, really bad time because I had pitched my little heart out in all that year. As a matter of fact, one of those, I can't remember, I think it was 2022. One of those weeks I'd pitched like 5 things in 4 days. It was something crazy. And I was doing my best. Like I was doing really great pitch decks and really good pitches. And I thought it should have been working. And I'd been on staff the year before and I'd written a book the year before. And I was like, I was going to kill it in 2022 and nothing happened. And in October, a friend of mine took me to lunch and because I said, I'm really in a bad place. And she took me to lunch and we sat down and we strategized but mostly we talked. And I said, I'm a person who has told other people that they can have their dream. I said, no, I don't know that I can have mine. Ugh. And I said, then what kind of a fraud am I telling people that they can do it and I can't do it? I said, and I've got all the contacts in the world. I said, I know everybody who's in positions of power in all these different studios. And I don't know how to do this any better. And if I can't make it, what hope is there for somebody who's coming up behind me who doesn't have those contacts?
Hmm.
And we know how hard it is for anybody, white, male, I don't care, specific, but particularly for people of color. And I was really, really concerned. And we sat down and we talked, and she said, I want you to do something. She gave me this book. I don't even know if I have it, but it's like a little daily planner kind of thing. None of it makes any sense. But what it did do for me was it made me write down, here's some things I'm going to do. Here's some action items, what I'm going to do. But mostly the conversation was about, what are you doing this for? And again, we all know this when people go, would you do this even if you didn't get paid? And the answer is, of course, yes. I would just go write a play and go, let me go put it up in the, the Idaho Community Theater. I don't care. Yes, of course. I would do this anyway. But what we really got to underneath it all was again, you go like, why am I? What am I really afraid of? And what we came around to after a lot of digging was, it was all about how it looked to the outside world. Well, what am I going to say? When people go, well, what have you been up to? I'm going to have nothing to say. What are they going to think about me? How are they going to feel about, oh my God. And I realized that I'd been looking at the whole thing wrong. And that there was no they. That nobody's looking for me. No one's checking for me. No one's asking that question. Nobody. And if you look from the outside, I've got a whole career of stuff that I could look at my resume. I've done a lot of stuff. No one's saying, what is Kelly doing now? What is she going to check off the box now? It was all about me. It was all about the fact that I was twisting everything into this weird sort of kaleidoscope of thinking that I needed to do something for other people that doesn't exist. And when I remembered that, my grandmother used to always say, nobody's looking at you. She used to famously say, nobody's looking at you. Like, nobody cares. Nobody cares if your hair is out of whack, if you're walking crooked. Nobody cares. They're not looking. They're bothered about themselves. They're not looking at you. But I had to really sit with that. And then at the end of the lunch, she said, I want you to reach out to 3 people. Who those 3 people going to be? So I wrote down 3 names, 3 people who had said in the past that they would be helpful, but they hadn't been helpful. Like, I'd reached out to them before and they hadn't been helpful. She said, just reach out to them again. So I reached out to some people, and I didn't hear back from 2 of them, but I heard back from the 3rd. And the 3rd one had said a while before, she had said, hey, if you have a project, just run the log line by me and I'll let you know if I want to hear it. Well, we pitched a particular project that I loved, and I thought, oh my God, it's for sure going to go to, X network. Everybody passed. So I was like, well, let me just call her. So I call her up. And I said, I was kind of surprised. And by the way, it took her 5 days to get back to me. So I'm thinking, oh my God, another person who's like not going to call me. So I call her up and I said, I was surprised you didn't want to hear this. And she said, hear what? And I said, well, this project we were going to take out, I heard that you didn't want to hear it. She goes, no, I never even heard the log line. What's the log line? And I told her the log line, and she goes, I love it. Pitch it to me. And within a week, it might have even been less than a week, we had the pitch, and she virtually bought it in the room, but then it took a couple of days. And then a couple of days later, she purchased it. She bought it. That was in the end of November. At the same time, the screenplay that I had written had gotten bought at the same time. So within a couple of days of each other in December, I sold 2 projects. And then I came to find out that of the other 2 people that I'd reached out to, both of them were in fear of their jobs. And one of them was dealing with a friend who was ill.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, so them not calling me back has nothing to do with me. Them not calling me back is everything to do with that they're in a terrible place. They needed support. Yeah. I'm thinking it's all about me. You're not calling me back. Had nothing to do with me. They wanted to help, but they were not in a position to help. They couldn't even help themselves.
Yeah.
So it put a whole different spin on everything. It made me decide to really go back to, why am I writing these things? It's for me, it's not for them. If somebody responds to it, that's awesome. Let's go on the ride together. This business is crazy pants right now. And if you aren't making it in this business, it's not about you. It's about the world that we're finding ourselves in. Everybody's at sixes and sevens. Everybody is trying to figure it out. Everybody's holding on for dear life. We just went through a 4-month strike.
Mm.
Our poor actors in arms with us are also feeling this. Nobody's in a good place. Most of my friends who are even at really secure places, or you think, are getting downsized. People are having major changes, life changes going on right now. So we have to start to really recalibrate the why and the how and the what. And I wish I had answers. I wish I had more concrete answers, but I feel like we're going to be in this weirdness for a minute. So we better get used to the chaos and figure out another way to put ourselves out there. The good news is that we keep evolving. So if you remember, 20 years ago, we didn't have the interweb. We didn't have the ability to shoot something on our iPhone and go put it up on Vimeo, or Vimeo's still even a thing, or TikTok, or, we didn't have a lot of things that we have now. And either we embrace those things or we don't, or we find something else to do with it. I love that people are making projects that into graphic novels, and there's a lot of different ways to be creative. It's going to be very different. And I think a lot of people are writing books, and I'm excited about that because I'm a huge consumer of great books. So
That's
I feel
awesome.
like we have a lot of places to go. We just have to figure out where we're going, who's coming with us, why we're doing it. But I
Is
had a
this
lot of learnings this last year. It was a lot of learnings. I had to go deep.
Yeah. I was gonna say this feels like it's right in line with how you reinvent yourself every X number of years. Like, is this Kelly the Writer 2.0? Like, is this kind of the natural evolution, you think?
Yeah, and I think it's accelerating. I think if I were doing this in my 20s, I'd probably go get on a show for a few years and work my way up the food chain, and then run a show or pitch a show and see if I could get to run my show. I do think that there's a compression of time right now with me because I am not, 20 years old. And so my choices are very deliberate because they have to be.
Well, also you have the wisdom that you didn't have in your 20s on these choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
something I've noticed too. Like I get stuff done much quicker now, and even in my communications, I'm much more succinct than I used to be.
Right.
I'm very much to the point, and
Right.
I've tried to be very conscious of people's time. Like, to me, that's become again one of those like hot commodities that you just can't buy more of, right? So
Yeah.
try to
True.
be really respectful of that stuff, and conversely, I want people to be very respectful of my time as well, right? If this meeting could be an email, just make it an email. This
Right.
could be a short email, make it a short email. That's
Yes.
interesting. Do you think it's partially like your wisdom over time, the context you've developed over time, just knowing what to do, what not to do these days? Like, or do you feel like some kind of sense of urgency just as you get older?
I do think that there's a little sense of urgency. I think that's also just honing down into what's worth your time to take on. What are you putting out? What are you trying to say? Who are you spending your time with? Are
Mm.
you wasting time? There are people out there who will try to waste your time. I'm trying really hard to, again, that's why there's a year of no coming up. I did 7 years of yes. I said yes to everything. I met with everybody. As a matter of fact, by the end of the year, I ended up meeting two really, really interesting people. I'm glad I said yes to those two people, but they were completely outside of my normal scope. And I found very, very interesting interactions with them. But for the most part, I'm going to hunker down and just sort of see what I can accomplish and how far and how deep I can go and if I'm saying the right thing that I want to say.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a lot of, again, wading through the sludge of finding the wrong thing and then tossing it aside and going, no, that's not going to happen. Let's find the right thing.
I think it's easier said than done because I think it takes a lot of courage to put your time, energy, your heart into something and then say, no, this isn't good enough. Let me completely scrap it and rewrite it like that. To me, that feels like a courageous act to hear you say that.
Better to do that. But you know what? You always learn something no matter what you do. It's a learning piece. It might not be the thing. It might be the stepping stone to something else. So I have a script that I wrote about my childhood, and I took a very quirky comedic take on something that was really very tragic. And it's not ready. It's not the thing. But I think it's on the way to the thing. And the first step was I had to do this version of it to find the real version of it. I had to go through it in order to go, these are the pieces that I like, these are the pieces I don't like. I'm ready to talk about it now. I might not be ready to talk about that part now. So, and then again, as you said, some of those memories are little shadows. They're little, it's like putting things through the mimeograph where you just go, it's a little foggy for me. And here, for example, this is something that's really interesting. I only recently, my mom and I were, I was a single kid. She was a single woman. She married this guy. They were married for about 8 years. And of those 8 years, and he had 4 daughters. And of those 8 years, some real shit went down. So his first wife had committed suicide. One of his daughters had joined a cult. One died of MS. One died of a drug overdose. Another one's still alive, but had attempted suicide. So it was a terrible, terrible place to live for 8 years. And he was bonkers. You know, you can't not be bonkers in that situation. But I think he started the bonkers train moving.
Is that right? Yeah. He was the conductor on the bonkers.
Yeah. But it was really, really hard for me to, I knew I had to purge it and I was going to purge it on paper, but it was really hard for me to find a way to do that. So I did it in the funny way because we were also survivalists to a certain extent. So we were living in Beverly Hills, but we were all forced to garden in a community garden just in case the world was ending. We had our entire gardening shed was outfitted with survival gear, and he started a church so that he could get the tax write-off. So we had to do church things. We had to read the Bible. I don't know that anybody actually read the Bible, but we had services in our house. So it was really crazy pants. This was a weird place. But again, then there was this undercurrent of all this darkness and all this other stuff that was happening. And I had a really hard time getting there. And I remember that there was the night that my older stepsister had tried to commit suicide. I remember that night very well. And so it was this jumping off point for this piece. And it wasn't until earlier in 2023 that I actually ever asked my mother, why did she do it? I had never asked her before. And it wasn't until last year that I asked my mother, why did you stay? Because her choice obviously affected my life. her being in that situation and staying in that situation until we were forced to literally flee the situation affected me. And her answers to both of those questions were really, really important for me to know. And the fact that I had never asked was, I think, my coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And then I got to a place where I was like, no, I'm ready to pick that scab, which is a horrible image. I was ready to pick at it to see what was going on. And so some of those things they just aren't ready. You're just not ready to get there.
It seems like a lot of that stuff would take time.
You got to, I think, huh?
Seems like a lot of that would take time.
Yeah, but come on, I'm now like way old enough to get there.
I know. But there's so many things like in my life. Oh, I don't know, so many. There's enough things in my life where I can see them out of the corner of my eye, but they're not real if I don't turn and stare right at them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like maybe it's just a little thing. Like maybe it's nothing, right? But it's still there, and I catch it from time to time. But I try not to look right at it because it's
right. I know, but that's where all the juicy goodness is. That's where your story is.
Yeah,
that's where story is.
I'm just imagining myself kind of in that scenario, which isn't crazy hard. I had kind of a crazy childhood. I mean, not nearly as interesting as yours. Probably a lot more vanilla, but I remember the instability of it and never knowing what to expect. Like, what was I walking in on today?
Right.
Was this going to be happy person? Was this going to be scary person? Is this going to be, like you just...
you had an alcoholic in the family too.
Yeah. Somehow that dude is still alive. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like I tell people, like, the monster under the bed was real for me. Like it was a human. And then when that person left, my sister stepped up, and she's kind of a sort of paranoid, schizophrenic, crazy, very unpredictable. And it's like, you out of the frying pan into the fire, right? It's like you never know what stability necessarily means. And then for you, like having all that chaos at home, did you bring friends over? It's like, how did you explain this erratic behavior to like your friend? You were probably always having to try and play mediator, no, it's okay. They just, they speak in tongues sometimes. It's all right. Don't mind it. It's like, that's gotta be insane for a person. So I could see how you would learn to be extremely adaptive. I could see how you would learn to reinvent yourself, how you'd learn to shed your skin and become this new person. Like, it totally tracks. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think, again, we're getting back to where we started, which is, did you create this persona? Did you really feel the wonder and excitement that you woke up when you were 9 years old? Or did you have to make that happen for yourself in order to survive it? I think I always had it. I think I grew up before this 8 years of my life. I had a very good childhood. I had, as you know, my family was a large family. I always went down the house, but there was I was very, very close with my great-grandmother and my grandmother and my cousins. There was a lot of people around. There was a lot of joy around. And then I get into this really weird, dark place that was sort of schizophrenic, in that there were times that I loved my little younger sister and times that we couldn't stand each other. We always shared a room together. So either we were the best of friends or we were the worst of friends. We were always exploring. We were embedded in a canyon. We were exploring, or we were at each other's throats. So there was good in the crap. And then there was, when Harold came home at night and you just were terrified because you didn't know if you're getting good Harold or bad Harold. And I say the exact same thing that you do. And he would drink a bottle of wine by himself, and he'd fall asleep on the sofa. And there was a night that he said he was going to watch we had a dog and a rabbit who always liked to play together. And he's like, I'll watch them. And then he didn't watch them, and the rabbit died. And I was like, that was my rabbit. Peedley was mine. And you didn't do the thing you said you were going to do. So I can't trust anybody.
Mm.
And I would go to this day, I feel a little awkward. I'm getting over it now, but when I go to a event, banquet, I like to sit on the outsides. I don't like to sit in the middle. I don't like to sit in the front. I would want to know what the doors are.
Mm.
I want to know in a movie theater. I always have a go bag in every single car. I sent my kids to college with go bags. Everybody's got money. Make them, even though we know that the world has gone cashless, I'm like, nope, you're going to take that $20. Like, you just never know what you're going to need bus fare to get home because somebody's forgotten to pick you up. Like, you
Yeah.
just don't know.
Yeah. I feel that. I and that
I
kind
know.
of
I can see you
oh
feel it. Yeah.
oh my days. That shit gets in your bones, and it is so deep that and something that's a huge point of pride for me is that my kids will never know that. They will never have to understand that all the way to their mirror. You know what I mean? Like they'll never. I'm screwing them up in all kinds of interesting ways, but
But
not
not that way.
those ways, right? It's like not those ways,
I agree
and,
with you. Yeah.
and that stuff hits home with me. That hits home with me big time.
And then the flip side of that is what you just said. You are changing that history of trauma. Um, you are giving them what you didn't have. I think I'm doing the same thing for my kids.
Yeah.
I kiss them all the time. I put them in my lap. I say, I'm going to do this until I'm 90. You're always going to be my baby.
Uh,
They should never worry about where their next meal is going to come from. They should never worry that I don't love them.
I tell them I
And
love
then,
them every day, and
right.
I tell them good night every night.
Yeah.
It's just I think when they leave the house, which isn't so far in the future, I will probably text them every night. I don't. Like, kids these days, they don't realize that a phone can actually be used as a phone anymore.
Right.
But I will text them and remind them
Exactly.
of those things.
Yeah.
But so many people are inclined to hurt people in the same way they were hurt. What is it? Was it about some individuals like yourself that see that hurt for what it was and vow to never repeat it? Like, what do you think it is about a person that pushes them to say, this is never going to be me? Whereas other people just repeat those traumas.
I don't know. I mean, it might be the awareness. It might just be the work. I mean, we we decide at a certain point to do the work to feel better, and then that sort of flips to that you don't want to harm
Yes.
others. I think my mom uh, taught me how to meditate when I was really young. We went through the 70s. We were like hippies. So we were we were gardening our own stuff, you know. Um, so I learned to just get quiet. I came from a Christian Science background where it's all about spirit, mind, soul. We do our best to, when you talk about healing, and there was just like there was a whole culture, I think, that I grew up in where we were doing some of that mindfulness early on.
Yeah.
I still meditate every morning.
Yeah.
I still do. I wake up, I meditate for about 15, 20 minutes. Um, I'm not always great at it. My mind ping pongs. And then I start work, and I work from when I wake up, usually around 5. I work from 5 to 8 in the morning before the world wakes up. Which I've heard Greta Gerwig does the same thing, but I think you're in that state of openness. And I think that work that we all do on ourselves goes into it. It's like do no harm. I don't know. I don't know why, but I think also we're all searching, as we started talking about. We're searching for, what are we doing here, and why are we doing it, and what's the purpose, and What's our goal with this? What are we trying to leave behind? And lately I've been thinking a lot about, so this came up recently. So you know how they had that Cary Grant movie uh recently with the guy who plays Malfoy's father in the Harry Potter movies. He was playing Cary. And this has been a series of conversations I've had with my kids who are in their 20s. And I go, do you know who Cary Grant is? They go, no. Do you know who Clark Gable is? No. When I ask
Classics.
them, do they know who James Caan is? She goes, oh yeah, yeah, Buddy the Elf's dad. And I was like, oh my God, no. Sonny Corleone, what are you talking about? You've got to know The Godfather. Um, and you realize how people who are terribly, terribly important to my generation, who are the Jimmy Stewarts of the world, like all of those people who, Lucille Ball, who all made an impact on me wanting to be in the industry and watching all those old movies and being, they were actual movie stars. Those people are meaningless to 20 somethings today. Just like was it Clara Bowes and the Louise, whatever her name is, the silent era. Those people who were sort of important to my grandmother were meaningless to me. So you realize how fleeting we are on this planet, that we are just blips,
Yeah.
that we are gone. And no matter what you say, Brad Pitt in 30 more years is no one's know who he is. And yet he's incredibly important to us today. So you realize that, what are we leaving behind? Are we going to leave a piece of work behind? Does that work have to be magnificent? Does it have to be the Old Man in the Sea? Or can it be 27 Dresses and be as impactful? Or I don't know. But I think I'm going through this whole thing of, what do you want to spend your time on? And how do you want to put yourself out there? And what's the point of all of that? And if there is no point and you just want to make something that's fun, can that be the point? And it's a larger conversation that goes back to me sitting with my friend Ada at lunch and her going, why are you doing this? And me going, oh, I was doing this because of how it looked. She's like, no. So then we got to go back and go to the beginning and go, okay, why are you really doing this? And then I think of people who like James Baldwin. I just read something James Baldwin's again recently, and I don't know. You just kind of go, some of those things just sort of they endure because he's speaking words for me. He's talking for me. And that's why it's important. So how do I talk for other people? And what do I say that's deep enough and resonant enough, even if there's a funny joke on top of it? Does that then help change how you saw this woman when she walked into a room with all those microaggressions pointed at her? I don't know. We're all trying to figure this shit out.
For sure. You know what I think about it's stuff like that. Like, this is tricky because my podcast I do here with people, I don't edit them. I cut the middle, or rather I cut the end off, I cut the beginning off, and then whatever happens in here stays in here. And for me, it's one, sheer laziness, right? Let's not mince words, right? It's like, yeah, it's efficiency, I should say, efficiency and time. No, but what I learned one time was, I read this book and there was this part of it that really meant a lot to me. And my friend happened to, I think it was my friend, might have been my wife, I don't remember. Somebody else read the same book at almost the same time, and I was discussing with them, and they had a completely different take. And the part that really resonated with them was completely different. And so, I don't know, I had kind of this realization that you never know what's going to click with somebody. What's really going to resonate, what's going to connect and fit into some missing puzzle piece inside their heart or in their head. And so for me, I had the luxury of, I don't cut anything out because I'm too afraid I'll pull that special piece out. And so when I think about folks like you who are writing things, you're making these conscious decisions, you're editing, you have to, you're forcibly having to remove pieces, and like, that's like sucks. Like, you know what I mean? It's like whenever you adapt a movie from a book, very few times, I think The Shawshank Redemption is the only like book I've ever written that the movie was better, right? Because it was just a little short story, right? It wasn't fully fleshed out, you know? And every other novel I've ever read, movie adaptation never did it justice, right? Because they had to cut so many things out, you know, that were, you know, maybe special to me or important to me or added flavor. So I can't even, like, when you're talking about this woman having these microaggressions, something could be so important in there. It's like, how do you decide what pieces to leave, what pieces to cut? That's gotta suck.
Yeah, but I would say again, sometimes something has to be something else. So when you talk about a book having to cut things out, I've never read some book. Like, let's just say The Godfather. I've never read the book The Godfather. I remember when it came out, I remember how people were excited about it, and then they make this movie. And the movie is packed with all of the things that are in this book, but there's also things that are not in this book. I don't know that. I'm only experiencing it from my perspective, which is fresh. And to me, what they added was music and tone and person, you know, characters, bodies, intonation, expression, emotion. I might not have felt Sonny die in the book the same way that I saw him on screen. And I was shocked when I saw him on screen. All those bullet holes in his body and his body jerking and being so upset about it. I don't know that I would have gotten that. And I certainly wouldn't have gotten that as a 10-year-old kid or whenever it came out. I would have had to have come back to it today as an adult, and I might not have ever done that. So sometimes it has to be that thing at that time. And don't forget, look at all the people who've seen that, who now have a language that we can all talk about, as opposed to waiting for everybody to read that book.
Yeah, it has a life of its own for sure.
It does.
I say I read, I cheat, I listen to audiobooks. So
I do too. Yeah.
It's the mashup of all those worlds. So I get the narration, I get the inflection, I get the personality. And for like when you're listening to Lord of the Rings, it's like impossible to pronounce any of those names or keep the characters. But they do it all for you, and I don't have, you know, so just, and also like,
but do you feel like you're cheating? Don't you, a little bit?
Because it's like you tell people you read this book, and then my wife will say, he listened to the audiobook. Like, dude, it doesn't matter. It counts.
Right.
Count
yes,
it.
I agree.
Give me credit for the no.
It's read.
But I like it because also like when I'm reading a book, if I get to an exciting part, I'm going so fast, I'm skipping things. Whereas the audiobook, it forces me to really engage with it and be in there in it, you know,
right.
Paced and all that stuff. And so I've had some, it's so weird. So like I commuted a lot for a while, and I would listen to audiobooks. That's how I learned to survive these long trips. Like every day I was driving about 200 miles a day for about a year and a half.
My Lord.
It would be funny. So like I'd get home, you know, you're like decompressing with your partner at the end of the day. You're just talking about the stuff that went, and I'd be like, oh yeah, and then so-and-so did this thing, and then blah, blah, blah. And then I would check myself. I'd be like, no, actually that was a character from this audiobook I was listening to. You know, like, I think I was listening to like the Dark Tower series, which is like an amazingly long Stephen King series. And these people just became my friends.
Right.
They somehow just entered my consciousness as somebody sitting next to me. And so it was like, I know I did that at least 2 or 3 times. Like where I was telling this little anecdotal story about this thing that happened to a friend of mine. It's like, wait a minute, no, that actually did not happen.
Right.
So weird how it invaded my consciousness that way.
That's so interesting. That's right. It happens. I think that's glorious.
Yeah, it's crazy. But to me, that's like the best of both worlds. I get all of the amazing breadth of the book, but I also get the acting kind of portion of the movie. So I love it.
Yeah. There have been books though where I have stopped listening to them because the reader has been so terrible.
Oh my days. So this the if you ever listen to the Dark Tower series, it's like 3rd or 4th book. there's this amazing voice actor. He does such a great job. And then all of a sudden, like third or fourth book, it kicks over to like this nasally, like Yankee accent. I'm like, what is happening here? Turns out the narrator died. And in his honor, Stephen King narrated the book himself. I was like, oh.
And that's the whole, yes.
I was crapping on this guy left and right. And I was like, oh, man, my bad.
That's terrible.
Yeah. I felt.
Well, he doesn't really have a very specific voice.
He's very Yankee. But, it was just the juxtaposition. It was fine, by itself. But
you suffered through it.
When you compare it to the other one, just the quality, it was very different.
Right. Yeah. Oh, it's a bummer.
But
I just read a book that I'm going to say book on tape. I read a book. Did I read it? That's so interesting. I can't remember if I read it. I'm pretty sure I read it because I remember turning the pages, but I read it on Libby. So I don't have the physical book, right? So I will remember if I've read the book because I read it because I remember where the words are on the page. But I read this book on Libby that I really liked, that they're making into a TV show that I'm not sure I'm going to like. And it's called Dark Matter. I think the guy's name is Blake Crouch. He wrote something else that's been on TV before. But it was a page turner. It was really fast to read. And I loved it so much because the theme was so resonant in the book. And I thought, oh, wow, it's like about quantum physics and time travel and alternate planes, right? So
awesome.
A guy who finds himself sort of traversing back between different versions of himself in different alternate parallel universes. And the theme of it was so well done. And I thought, oh, he's managed to do something which was tell a really quick, fast-paced story. So it's just really it's very much a thriller. This guy's racing to get back to his world where he exists in his world with his wife. And what I loved about it was that the theme was, he starts off sort of hating his life. He's really discontent. And then he realizes he gets pushed into this other world where nothing's quite the same. And then he tries to find his way back and he finds himself in another world and another world. And so everything's sort of like his world, but not quite. And ultimately what he's searching for is to get back to his world, because he realizes that his world was the best world. Mm-hmm. That mundanity, that stuff that he was bristling up against the whole time was exactly what he always wanted. He just didn't appreciate it. And
everything he took for granted.
My heart. Did a beautiful job of it. And I was in it because I was carried away by the cat and mouse part of it, but I was also in it because I wanted him to find his wife again. Mm. Oh, I want to do that. I want to make that.
Oh, my days. Kelly, I could quite literally continue to talk to you into tomorrow. But
let's just pick this up tomorrow then.
You got it. What time are you good? You said 5 a.m., right?
Right, exactly.
Oh, my days. No, I try and be, again, time is like super important to me and I want to be respectful. So we're coming right up on time. So right here at the end, I like to ask, is there any way that you would like people to interact with you? Anything you'd like to promote? Anything, people to come and check out? Any books you want people to buy? What does that look like?
Oh, well, they can buy my book. My book is The Executive Chair, what is it? A Writer's Guide to TV Series Development. That book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all those other things. So you can buy my book. That's very much, and I have it on, it's an audio book. And if you're interested in listening to me talk, you're going to listen to me talk.
Is it you narrating it?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. All right. I'm in. I'm going to do it.
It was a harrowing experience. I hated doing it. It was awful.
You're
very, very picky about how you say things. Anyway, but I think, I've got a website, kellyedwards.co. CO. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. Oh, and by the way, on Facebook, I'm going to start posting. I've got a Facebook page, so I'm going to start posting like little. I don't think I call them newsletters, like little essays. I think as I go through my year, I did a whole year of having written the book, so it was the whole process of writing the book, and so now I'm going to do just little things. I think I'm starting off with 2024 and how this is my year of no, and how to get through the crazy.
Hmm.
So I'll just be communicating with people through that. And if you want to, shoot me a little DM or something about any questions you might have, I'm happy to answer them.
I generally
That's
hope you
it.
have a no counter that's constantly running on that Facebook page.
Oh yeah. How many times I say no?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely. I've actually already started. So I've said no to. I actually turned down a job. Uh, Somebody asked me to come speak, and I said no. I've done a couple of things like that. Some of it's just like if I'm gonna need to lay down after I write a script for 5 days, I'm gonna need that time back. So how do I collect that time? Let me ask you this. Did you feel like you got everything out of me that you wanted? Is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we go?
I come into these with zero expectations. And
Okay.
to be honest, I always 100% hope they go just the way this one went.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I've really enjoyed listening. I feel like I'm getting to know so many different people in so many different walks of life that I would never have chosen randomly to pick up on a podcast, but because you've collected this odd bag of folks,
Yeah,
it's
it's
such an education.
Island of Misfit Toys.
Yeah.
And you get to add yourself to the cast of characters.
Thank you. I appreciate it.